Hello and welcome to another edition of Whiteboard Chef Management. This is the first in a two-part series on food cost control, and specifically the 40 Thieves of food costs. If you have been in the industry for a while and have had to attend P&L meetings as a chef or a manager, then you know that tracking down either a real high or a real low food cost and giving explanations for it can be tricky. There's so many things to look at. Specifically, there are 9 major areas that you need to have control of in order to manage your food cost. One is your purchasing procedures. Next is your receiving procedures. Then proper storage and rotation, prep specs, production procedures, your service protocols and ways that you can lose money or damage food costs during service. Same for sales. Inventory is especially key. And finally, your accounting department and holding them accountable. All right, so with that said, we are going to dive into the first 5 in the 40 Thieves of food cost. All right, so let's dive into the first 5 areas which you can build better systems to control your food cost. Purchasing department. If you're only buying from 1 or 2 vendors, then you're not getting a lot of competition. Now I know that if you are in a large operation, you'll probably have a exclusive contract with like Cisco or FSA, and you have to buy 70 or 80% of product from them. But that still leaves the other 20 or 30%, say your produce or specialty meats or seafood, that sort of thing. You should have at least 2, maybe even 3 vendors that you purchase from so that there's some competition. Otherwise, if you only got 1 vendor, they're going to sell it to you whatever price they want to. No bid system. Kind of goes back to having competition. So on a weekly basis, your expensive products, your high-use products, again, meats, fish, produce, send that out for bids so that you get a bid from at least 2 different vendors on what the price is going to be this week, and that way you can always have the best bid and the best price. Over purchasing, that kind of goes without explanation. If you've got too much, then you've got to sell it cheaper in order to get it off your hands, or you end up losing it. No audit of invoices and payments. Most companies are going to have an accountant who will go through and confirm purchases, credits, that sort of thing. If you don't, then that's definitely an area that you could be losing some money. All right, next area is the receiving department. First, you should have a receiving department. If it's yourself, then these are some of the steps that you want to have in there. Theft. The receiving department is an area that can steal. Let's say you get 20 pounds of salmon and they put 15 pounds into your kitchen. You need a way to verify that and hold them accountable. No tracking of credits. You need a system to track credits. Let's say that the truck driver gets there and something wasn't on the truck. How do you keep track of that credit? Or you're supposed to get 25 pounds according to the invoice, but you've got 20. Or you rejected something and sent it back. Your receiving department needs to have a way to keep track of that information so it can be balanced out at the end of the month. No check-in process. If your delivery guy just gets there and drops off a pallet, has you sign, and he leaves, you're trusting him way too much. Every single thing on the truck needs to be checked in and verified that it is actually on the invoice and in your possession. Additionally, you should also have a sheet from what exactly you ordered, and your receiving guys comparing that against what you are receiving. There have been times where I've seen salespeople sell you, say, 30 pounds of something you ordered 20 pounds of. Or maybe they'll send you something that's more expensive, a little higher product, your receiving guys need to be confirming that what you are receiving is the same thing that you ordered. Perishables left out too long. So your receiving guys should know enough to put all of your cooler products away first and then do your dry storage items. Storage. This is kind of a big one. Foods that are improperly stored. There's a number of ways that can happen. Shellfish left in ice that then melts and they die, or packages packed on top of each other and crushing what's on the bottom. Could be your fresh produce being put into dry storage, or fresh fish being put in your freezer. So anything that is improperly put away is an area of concern, obviously. No daily inspection or rotation, essentially no FIFO. On a daily basis, you or someone on your team needs to be inspecting all the product in your fresh coolers, your seafood and produce, so on, making sure that it's still in good shape, making sure it's being properly rotated, and making sure that your crew properly rotates product. No record of transfers. Now, if you're just a standalone restaurant, this won't matter, but if you have one or two restaurants or more, or maybe a restaurant and banquets, or you have a employee cafeteria and product is moved from one to the other, then you need to keep track of transfers so that you can accurately know the food cost for each one of your venues and keep track of the billing to each one as you move product around. Storage areas not being secured. What happens when you go home at night? Do you have a protocol in place when you're not there so that someone is in charge of maintaining your storeroom? And how about after all the kitchen is gone? Does all of your product get locked up, your dry storage, your freezer, so on? Unorganized. This kind of goes back to FIFO. If you have your prep guys or your line guys organizing, one guy's putting product here and the other guy's putting it over there, you get new clams in, you've got old clams here and new clams up over here, and so on and so forth, people are going to pull the wrong product. So making sure that same foods are next to each other or in front and behind each other, so on and so forth, so that it's easy to find same product and to make sure that it's properly rotated. Next area is preparation procedures. A lot of times there's excessive trim on vegetable, meats, and seafood. You need to have a spec on, if you're breaking down salmon, what is your yield percentage that you expect out of that? How do you train the guys to do it properly? How about on a bell pepper or an onion? How much trim is cut off of that? And are you using some of that trim? People that aren't properly trained are just going to do whatever is easiest. So you need to train them properly. No check on raw yields. So just because you've told them doesn't mean they're going to do it. We all know this. You need to follow up on a regular basis to make sure that the instruction you've given is the instruction that they are actually doing. No secondary use of trim. This is especially true for meats and seafood. You need to have a secondary use, say for your beef trim for burgers or some type of a stir fry, and so on and so forth. Another area that you can be losing money on your food costs is in your production. So same as ordering, if you overproduce food, chances are you're going to lose it. Standard way that happens is you got a guy coming in, he's working the same station the next 5 days. Rather than prepping some each day, maybe he decides, I'm going to prep all of this for the next 5 days. And then on day 4, it's spoiling, it doesn't look good, you tell him to throw it out, or he's got way too much, and on day 6, you're throwing out a whole ton of food because over prep has been done in order to make their life easier. Incorrect cooking temperatures or processes. A great example of that is prime rib. If you throw your prime rib into a 350-degree oven on high fan and just cook it the whole way that way, you're going to get a lot more shrinkage than if you were to use an Ultrasham. You might get at least 10% more yield out of an Ultrasham than a high temp, high fan oven. 10% is a lot on prime rib. Holding food for too long, which is essentially poor batch cooking. So if you are an a la carte restaurant and you cook everything a la minute, this isn't going to apply to you. But even if you cook, say, food ahead for the next 15 minutes on some vegetables or starches, then you need to be controlling that. Especially true in cafeterias, buffets, banquets. Having enough food to get through the peak, but then that transition time is where things fall apart. You'll keep overproducing because you're used to being on the high or on the peak, and then all of a sudden people stop eating and now you've got a ton of food. So really managing your production. No prep sheets or production sheets. If you don't have prep sheets, first the guys may forget about something and then you're kind of screwed when you get to service, or they're going to overproduce and do whatever they think is right. So you should be setting pars on the production sheets or the prep sheets for them. And ideally it'll be pars for slow days and pars for busy days. Not following recipes, or worse yet, no recipes. Now, I mean, pretty much every restaurant has recipes. The question is, does the crew follow them? Or do they make up their own variations because, oh, they think a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that, or, geez, an extra shrimp isn't going to matter, so on and so forth. So being sure first that you've got good written recipes that are accurate and checked out every 6 months or so, and also that the crew is following the recipes. All right, so that's a wrap up for the part 1 on the series of 40 Thieves of Food Cost. If you want to dive deeper into any of these, look at the links below to the 40 Thieves of Food Cost on my website. It goes much deeper into all of this with more detailed examples and actually a bigger list for each of the items here. And be sure to check out part 2. So, thanks a lot and have a great day.